The Iowa Hawkeyes are traveling to Arizona out west this weekend. This is Incompetent Sports Talk. Welcome to another edition of Incompetent Sports Talk. Along with Mike Rabin and Jake Burgers, I'm Alex Salzma. The 9th-ranked Iowa Hawkeyes thrashed Iowa State 35-7 inside a sold-out Kinnick Stadium. And let's talk about that game. And let's talk about that touchdown that Iowa State scored at the end, because it took them until 1:51 to go in the fourth quarter to even score that touchdown. And it was against our reserve defense with their first-team offense, so I almost don't even count that. But do you realize that Iowa had scored 70 unanswered points against the Cyclones until Iowa State put up that little feeble touchdown at the very end? Mike, what did you think of the game?
I think that touchdown, or that keeping the first-team offense in to get that touchdown in the end, is a reflection of the pressure on Coach Paul Rhodes from not only the Iowa State media, but the fans and the people in that department to get a touchdown. They really wanted to get the monkey off their back. So Iowa State scores a touchdown against our third and fourth string. Not really a big deal. Our defense played tremendous football. I've got to give the most credit in this game. I know everyone's going to want to talk about Adam Robinson and Jewel Hampton. They were great. But the offensive line, what a job they did. James Ferentz, Julian Vandervelde, Mark Zusevics, Riley Reef, all those guys, Nolan McMillan looking great, doing a great job coming together. That was the big question mark around this Iowa program coming into the season. The offensive line stepped up and has looked tremendous early in the season, and that's what I'm taking away from this Iowa State game.
And even on the rushing game, really quickly, Adam Robinson, career high, 156 yards and a touchdown on just 14 carries. Jewel Hampton, back for the first time he's been in the game for over a year, 84 yards, 20 attempts, and 1 touchdown, Jake.
Yeah, the offensive line looked tremendous. As Mike said, that was our one question mark leading into the season. Adam Robinson with a career game. Iowa had almost 500 yards of total offense, 275 coming from the ground. Also, another storyline is Ricky Stanzi, 11 for 18, 0 interceptions. Still has yet to throw an interception this year. That was his big bugaboo last year. So far, so good this year.
Let's talk now about the U.S. Open. Rafa Nadal getting his 9th major. He's only 24 years old, and he finally completed the career Grand Slam, the 7th male ever to do that. The question I want to pose to you guys is, number one, do you think Rafa Nadal eventually breaks the record for the most amount of major victories? Right now it's 16. Roger Federer has that. Do you think eventually he does that?
Personally, I do not think he does that. Roger Federer still has some good tennis in him. Obviously, he's not at the top of his game right now. Djokovic is also another strong competitor that Nadal will have to match up against in the future. Plus, Nadal has had some health issues with his knees and them breaking down with tendonitis and other injuries like that, which I think will prevent him from breaking the record that Federer currently has.
Yeah, and that style of tennis he plays, that physicality he brings to it, really almost makes you question whether he will or not, because you take a look at last year, he sat most of the year on the sidelines, but I think he's going to do it, and I think the way he's just training right now is differently. And you look at what Roger Federer did when he was 24 years of age. He had won only 6 majors. Nadal already has 9, and he still has more to go. And right now, he's so dominant on clay. I don't see anybody in the next 3, 4, 5 years even competing with him on clay. And Federer, obviously, his best days are behind him. I still think he can win some more majors. But Nadal right now is playing tennis. I mean, he's playing the best tennis of his life right now. He finally has that monkey off his back winning the U.S. Open. Mike, what do you think?
I think Nadal does ultimately break the record. Nadal, obviously, you discussed his preeminence on clay. I think he's becoming that kind of player on grass, too, at Wimbledon when he's healthy. I think at this point, I know this is tough with all the championships Federer's won there, I think he's better than Federer on the hard courts, and I think he's better than Federer on grass. He's just at the point now. Federer's just getting old. He's still got some good tennis in him, like you said, but I think Nadal is clearly the best player in the world. And I think he will break that record because of his ability to improve and make the doubters look wrong, like he just showed in the U.S. Open.
So the record now is 16 by Federer. Would you say that the record Nadal will have to break is 16? Do you see Federer winning another one?
I still think Federer wins another major, and I think he played well enough at the U.S. Open to win the major. I mean, he had 2 match points versus a very good Novak Djokovic in the semis. And before the semis, he breezed through every match, which included a win in the quarters versus Robin Soderling, who had beat him at the French this year. I still think he's good enough to win another major. I think he's really could be a favorite to win the Australian Open. It's obviously going to be Nadal because he's won 3 majors this year. But I still see Federer winning another major or two. I think Federer still might be a little better than Nadal on the hard courts. I think Federer is very underrated on the hard courts. But I think on grass, I know Federer is always very good on grass, but the way Nadal played at Wimbledon this year and the way he played before he got injured, I think he's maybe eclipsed him on grass, and on clay, obviously nobody can even touch him on clay.
And Nadal 6-2 against Federer in major championship finals. So you got to think as Federer gets a little older and Nadal moving more and more into his prime, I think Nadal is going to have the edge down the road.
Yeah, and it just would have been great to see these two meet at the U.S. Open final. And I like Novak Djokovic, but these two have never met at the U.S. Open final, and Nadal had never won the U.S. Open just until Monday night. It would have been great to see this two for this rivalry and to see if Federer could finally beat Nadal again, because he's lost his last several majors that they've played in majors. He's lost to him. Let's move on to some more football now. One of the storylines that we talked about last week was the fact that 2 FCS teams beat FBS teams, or 1 AA teams beating 1A teams. It happened 4 more times last weekend, so that's 6 times this year that 1A teams have lost to 1 AA teams. I'm going to briefly run down the list. Jacksonville State beat Ole Miss 49-48 in double overtime. North Dakota State beat Kansas 6-3. South Dakota, who had only been Division I for 3 years, beat Minnesota 41-38. Gardner-Webb beat Akron in overtime 38-37. Liberty beat Ball State 27-23. By the way, we do have Ball State next week in Kinnick Stadium. And probably the most shocking out of all of these, James Madison went to Blacksburg and beat number 13 Virginia Tech 21-26. Mike, why is this happening? And also I want to pose a question. How does this affect Boise State? Does it negatively impact them enough where it could keep them out of the national championship if they run the table?
Well, I'll answer the second part first. Clearly, James Madison win over Virginia Tech hurts Boise State. This is the kind of game that Boise State's going to hang their season on. Last year, they beat Oregon early in the season in Boise 19-8, and then ultimately Oregon went on to go to the Rose Bowl and win the Pac-10, which made Boise State look really strong at the end of the year. Now Virginia Tech opening up 0-2 could still run the table in the ACC, make a BCS bowl game. Based on what we're seeing, I don't think that's likely, but this does impact Boise. And I think a reason we're seeing some of these FCS schools compete with the FBS schools is just because teams like Virginia Tech, teams like Minnesota, down the line, Ole Miss, they're just not, I don't think they really prepare as hard as they do for some of these other big-time schools. And you've got to realize schools like James Madison, Jacksonville State, South Dakota, you know, all they hear about is how they're going to get beat up, and I think they get really motivated by that. And you know, we throw this term around with Iowa State playing Iowa in terms of their Super Bowl, but for South Dakota going to Minneapolis, that's their Super Bowl. That's their bowl game, if you will. That's their game of the year where they're really trying to go in and make a statement. And circumstances range, obviously. Virginia Tech losing to James Madison was a hangover. Minnesota clearly just not prepared for South Dakota. Jacksonville State against Ole Miss. Ole Miss just let down in the fourth quarter. I don't know, these teams just want to play and they want to win, and these coaches get their teams motivated.
Jake, why is this happening? Do you know last year it only happened twice? This year, only 2 weeks into the season, it's happened 6 times. What do you think?